Hey everybody, welcome to Fantasy R&R. This is your host Ryan.
And I'm Rob.
And this is week 14 of Fantasy Football 2022. Rob and I are going caroling.
This is Fantasy with Rob and Ryan. Fa la 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 Fantasy Football.
Merry Christmas everybody, it's that time of year. We're getting into the holiday spirit, and for this show we are going to talk about the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, the things to come, and all the fantasy players associated with those titles. Let's just get into it right now. We're going to have a list of guys that we think are things of fantasy past, and Rob, we are starting with Aaron Rodgers. I actually want you to take this one because you've been talking about it for a few years. We think the guy's absolutely nuts. He's on ayahuasca. He goes on the Pat McAfee show making excuses for himself but not the rest of his team. What do you see in the fantasy landscape going forward?
Well, first and foremost, I don't know if you know this, but 9/11, you might want to think that through. I think Aaron Rodgers is done. I think we were a year early on him. I know we've said that already this year, but we're trying to push that narrative. And I don't know. If you're Green Bay, you might want to see what Jordan Love's got in him, because Aaron Rodgers looks eased, but they're paying him a lot of money for the next couple years after this season. So I don't think he'll be out of the lineup just yet, but good golly. I can see 1 foot in the grave for Mr. Rodgers as we speak.
Moving on to Allen Robinson, I want to talk about him for a second. You know, I won't get into like the Jordan Love stuff of the future with the Packers and everything, but I agree Rodgers is done. Allen Robinson is the next guy here. Listen, when he went to the Bears, he kind of went over in real time and had to get adjusted to the playbook, but put up a pretty good season in 2018. 2019 and 20, people were disappointed with Allen Robinson for some reason, but we're talking about 100 receptions pretty much in both years, over 1,000 yards, 6 and 7 TDs respectively. It's these last two seasons, the one with the Bears and the Rams, and now he's hurt and still pulling a decent average per catch, but it seems like it's gone down over the years. I'm feeling like, his heyday was 2015 with the Jaguars. Allen Robinson is starting to really slow down. Maybe there's wear and tear on his body. I personally feel like he's droppable in keeper formats permanently. Or do you feel in the same way?
Yeah, the exact same way. And somebody off the top of my head that we've talked about, Michael Thomas, the same thing. I mean, he looked like a steal early this year, went off, was killing it, and then what do you know? He gets injured again, and the Saints still don't have a quarterback. I mean, come on, we gotta find something here. It looks like Winston ain't gonna be the answer, and Andy Dalton will forever be Andy Dalton.
Yeah, this is definitely a ghost of Christmas past. Michael Thomas is done. He did start off the year kind of hot, week 1, 22 points, week 2, 18, week 3, still had some catches before the injury, but now he's done again. And pushing 30 going into next season, I'm sorry, but he's a guy I'm just going to leave on the waiver wires. I think he's going the route of A.J. Green and Julio Jones. It's just over. It does happen this quick. So I'm putting Michael Thomas on that ghost of Christmas pass list. Leonard Fournette is a hard one for me to swallow. One of my favorite players. Didn't want to see him leave the Jags. And I apologize for talking about swallowing Leonard Fournette. But as the Tampa Bay offense changes here, are you seeing a decrease in Leonard Fournette's ability, or are you just seeing that Leonard Fournette attitude?
It's a really good question. Talent-wise, he still has it. I mean, you can tell he still looks like Leonard Fournette, but you have to question whether or not it is an attitude problem at this point. I mean, again, he was just abruptly kicked off the Jaguars when, again, the Jaguars were dismantling their team, but, they just cut him, and then under the guidance of Mr. Tom Brady, it seemed like he was fine. They win a Super Bowl, great, but now suddenly, we're not even talking about 2 years removed from the Super Bowl playoff Lenny. He's losing snaps, and there seems to be something at play here more than age. He's still not really all that old. Was he 29, 30 maybe? But I think this is definitely a changing of the guard in Tampa Bay's backfield. I don't think I'd be drafting Fournette anywhere for the years to come.
Yeah, and I don't think you need to drop him in a keeper league right away, but I do agree with you. Next year, he's going to be your backup. He's going to be your flex. He might get dropped to the waivers at some point. That's where I'm seeing a guy that never was, but is already fading into the past. A real Ebenezer Scrooge with his attitude online, especially in his response to that Henry Ruggs accident. Kadarius Toney, 2021. topped with 420 yards, probably smoked every one of them. He only has 1 touchdown in all 3 years here. He's averaging about 10 yards a reception. I feel like this guy, for such a high draft pick that, the Giants took him in the first round, I don't want anything to do with him.
No. I mean, it was funny. Everybody rushed to go get him when they're like, "Oh my gosh, he's going to the Chiefs." They did the same thing when Josh Gordon, the pothead himself, got signed last year, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, you got to get Josh Gordon." Field Yates is screaming at the top of his lungs. Kadarius Toney is, again, like we were saying, it never began, but they really wanted to kind of make it a thing coming out of Florida and everything, and he was great at Florida, but again, might be another attitude problem. Who knows? But I ain't touching. Since you talked about swallowing Fournette, I'm not touching Tony. He's not that great.
Yeah, I don't want to touch him, and I don't want to swallow Fournette. So we'll leave the good shit to them. Come here and know me better, man. We're going to Christmas present. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Keenan Allen, he's on that little fringe where it's like, is it the past? This was a bad year for an injury. Mike Williams, always injured. I hate that guy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the Chargers looked so super talented on offense. And with Herbert having his injury, I think this was just a kind of a freak thing, an off season, just a one-off. Next year, I think Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are still rosterable.
Yes, I definitely would say rosterable, but I wouldn't want anything to do with them, if that kind of makes sense. If I had him, I'd probably look at moving him. Allen being a little older, but Williams definitely with the injuries. I mean, again, we both were laughing all season long when Mike Williams was doing what he was doing, because we both had him at one point, probably even multiple times. But
yes.
Present, yes. Like,
I have
definitely
had Mike
Allen
Williams
Robinson,
multiple
Keenan
times
Allen.
to make this even gayer than it's been.
I love where this is just getting. Yes, this Christmas podcast just keeps getting gayer and gayer in all the good ways. But Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, yes now. But the guy present, somebody that you've talked about at length and talked me into, Justin Jefferson, who essentially looks like a top 3 to 5 pick going into next season. Of course,
you called this guy. All I'm saying is I think he's maybe the best wide receiver in the league right now for fantasy purposes.
This is true. A mini Let's Jag Off. I'll never forget this. Following him at LSU, doing what he did, playing with Burrow, I was like, man, this guy's really good. And the Jaguars had the 2nd pick in the first round, and I think it was like 21. And I was just salivating, and I'm praying. I'm like, dude, please draft Justin Jefferson, please. And we got, who did the Jaguars get? Clavon Chason from LSU, the undersized linebacker, who I'm pretty sure doesn't even sniff the field anymore. But Justin Jefferson is one of those guys. Yes, he is an absolute stud. What's your thoughts on Jefferson? Albeit I already know what they are.
Yeah, I mean that catch he made this year, probably. I think they put his gloves in the fucking Hall of Fame already. The dude has been in the league for just a couple of years, and he's already got that in the Hall of Fame. Absolute monster. He is the present. He is a top 5 draft pick next year. Bengals wide receivers also, like, I love T. Higgins. Obviously, he takes a little bit of a back seat, but he's you could do no worse than T. Higgins. Or, I'm sorry, you could do a lot worse than T. Higgins, taking him as a wide receiver 2 or a flex 1. Absolute monster. And then on the other side of the ball, Jamar Chase, who is such a tough kid. He's coming back from this injury, and he's gonna be playing for the rest of the season. Joe Mixon, probably one of the crazier performances we've seen from a running back in the last 5 years. So obviously there's a one-off there where he had a big week and it kind of skewed his average points. But I think with Joe Burrow at the helm, this is the present. The Bengals are the present. Stephanie stashed her team with them. They went to the Super Bowl. She won the fantasy championship, and I see it coming back again this year. They're on a roll right now where the Bengals are a scary team in the AFC, especially dominating the Chiefs for the 3rd time in a row. I'm very happy to see that for them. And this is the fantasy present. Joe Burrow is a top option. Higgins is a top option. Chase is a top option. Mixon's a top option for the next few years. Cam Akers, however, take that one away.
Yes, I'm going down with this ship. I don't care what anybody says. Let's strap some bells on to my heels, because I've got bells on. I'm dancing around with glee. Cam Akers finally had himself a heck of a game last week. Of course, I did not start him. But with the news of Stafford going down, Allen Robinson's down, Cooper Kupp is down, and now it looks like the Rams are going to resort to Baker Mayfield. Oh, look at that in breaking news. Cam Akers, I really just truly believe has the talent And I think the Rams have no other choice now but to just see what he's got. Like this week, I'm starting Cam Akers in our league, and I'm going to give this thing the old college try. And I'm saying start Cam Akers. I don't care what Field Yates or anybody on the Focus show or Matthew Berry says. I am going to stick with my gut. Start Akers, and if he totally flops, then there's egg on my face. But if he does well, this is just one of those guys. I just continue to believe in somebody I watched all throughout Florida State. And I even said, I was like, man, this would have been a nice little get here for the Jags when he went to the draft. Of course, he went, I think, like second round. But I still believe the talent's there. So, yes, I'm starting Akers. Yes, there's a chance I'm going to look like a fool. But
yeah, this is that Ebenezer Scrooge that really has to make a life decision here. Akers could either go into Christmas past real quick or Christmas future, depending on what happens the rest of this season.
Yes.
So, Amon-Ra St. Brown, a nice little gem from last year. 90 receptions, 912 yards, 5 TDs. Very respectable for a Lions rookie. This year, already has 76 receptions, 830 yards, averaging more yards per catch, and 6 TDs. I think this is a present wide receiver. We're going to see him be very useful for the next few years. I think it may be a longer window than guys like Allen Robinson, Allen Hurns, dudes like that. I think we'll see a little bit more out of him than that. Maybe he'll never be a top receiver like Tyreek Hill, but you never know. I'm just liking what I see out of him. And I'm thinking next year, Amon-Ra St. Brown probably needs to be drafted in the top 20. That's my feeling on it. And it's hard, to really get a grasp on some of these things because, like this year, I love Jalen Hurts. I don't think I could have expected what I'm seeing from him right now. And he's kind of that present and the future. We talked about the way the quarterback landscape is changing. We did this last week, and Hurts is just looking like an absolute MVP candidate. He's got to do a few more things and beat out Mahomes, but hey, he's the one winning games. Mahomes just lost a big game to the Bengals. Part of that's on Andy Reid for leaving it to his kicker instead of his $500 million quarterback. But at the same time, Hurts is going there, and the next guy up is Fields. And I want you to talk about Fields here, but the one thing I see is he does have an ability to throw a deep ball and an accurate ball, but I think he's getting a little panicked out there, and he's scrambling the way Hurts did last year. If he goes to a Hurts-style offseason, what do you think Fields is capable of as a ceiling?
Dude, honest to goodness, I think we are... Again, kudos to you for calling Hurts. I think even you were just like a year early, but you saw this coming, and now I think, didn't you say last year on the podcast that he was a future MVP? He's doing it 1 year later. I think Fields is following the same trajectory. I think we're talking about, like we talked about last week, the future of these scrambling quarterbacks. They're becoming monumental. I mean, 2 games with over 40 fantasy points this season, and that was just when they were starting to kind of let the reins loose with Justin Fields. So now they have a draft coming in with all the trades that they made, just stockpile draft picks. They're going to do what the Bengals did with Joe Burrow. You create a formidable offensive line to protect this man. So he's not getting happy feet, not scrambling for his life. They traded for Chase Claypool, Darnell Mooney, like we've talked about at length. We think one of the most underrated wide receivers, one of the fastest receivers, can't teach speed. One of the fastest receivers in the NFL. You got Cole Kmet, who we'll talk about here in a minute. But, this team is coming together. And it really does start with that quarterback. Go look at the Jaguars. I know we've been up and down this year, but go look at Jaguars this year with Trevor Lawrence, and Justin Fields was the next quarterback. In college, those were the 2 guys, both coming out of Georgia.
Right.
They said, watch out for these guys. I'm super high on Fields. I think he is the pinnacle future quarterback.
Yeah.
And he probably literally just right behind Hurts, but Hurts has that extra year that he's now tapping into the full potential and the team that the Eagles have built around him, which the Bears, I believe, are doing going forward for Fields.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I ever actually said Jalen Hurts would be a future MVP, but I did say that he'd be a fantasy star and a 30 total touchdown kind of quarterback. So Fields, maybe he'll follow that trajectory, start turning into 20 in the air, 20 on the ground kind of guy. I mean, it's possible that we could see a quarterback like him hit 20 rushing TDs. So as we wipe off the graveyard here and we change our ways to the future, I'm looking at wide receivers: Joshua Palmer, Calvin Ridley, Jahan Dotson. Just a quick assessment of those three guys, not individually, just what do you think they bring to the table?
Okay. Palmer has the hands and the route running. I just think there's only one ball in a very large Chargers team. I think you're looking at Calvin Ridley is going to be rostered in 99% of leagues next year. This dude is from Florida. This dude is in the final year of his rookie contract. This guy is going to want to make money. Trevor Lawrence will finally have that guy to throw down the field to. This guy is a burner with great hands. And Jahan Dotson is one of my guys from Penn State who, started off hot, got the injury. You got to wonder, were the Commanders just holding him back because, look, the quarterback situation's a complete joke. They're going to have to draft a quarterback. Jahan Dotson, to me, is going to be a top 15 receiver because I watched this guy. And go look at his tape. This guy doesn't drop footballs. Again, like you can't teach speed. You can't teach accuracy with your catches. And I think this dude is just an absolute monster. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I like that assessment, and they're all people to look for in a keeper league and stash for next year. And going on to the running backs, Isaiah Pacheco seems to be taking over Clyde Edwards-Hilaire's job, who was probably taken number one in dynasty drafts over Jonathan Taylor. Right now, Pacheco is having a decent season for a lack of playing time with about 111 attempts, 521 yards for a 4.7 average, and he's got 3 TDs on the ground. So I'm looking at him as a guy you could kind of sneak into good value next year, maybe as a top 30, top 40 pick, and come out, all the decent for the better of it. Rachaad White looks like he's taken over Christmas past Leonard Fournette's job. Rachaad White looks a little bit more explosive. He looks like he's got some hands. He can do everything that Fournette does. And there may be an attitude problem there. I think Rachaad White's a great stash. Brian Robinson, another guy you could stash on the Redskins. The Antonio Gibson saga seems to be coming to an end, which is weird because maybe Brian Robinson will have the same lifespan. Maybe you only get a couple of years out of him. But I think he's another dynasty stash or very good value next year, maybe 6 rounds, something like that. I think he's going to be one of those overlooked running backs like Pacheco, like Josh Jacobs was this year. People are just going to pass by. But also, we've got some other up-and-comers on the tight end group. Your boy Cole Kmet, Pat Freiermuth, Kyle Pitts. Quick assessment of those guys.
Yeah, really quick before I do that, going back to the graveyard, I think we could even include Clyde Edwards-Helaire in past, right? Like, I think that his prime, if you will, his NFL career, I think, is past. But I love all 3 of these tight ends. I was high on Patty Freiermuth. Again, another one of my state guys that I was just like, dude, this guy's got the size, this guy's got the route running, this guy's got the hands, guy's built like an absolute monster. Cole Kmet is almost cut from the exact same cloth. I believe he went to Notre Dame. Same thing. I really, and you can already tell too with Fields. I say Cole Kmet is as a tight end 1 going into next year. I really do. And then Kyle Pitts, who I think you and I are both kind of on the fence on. I'm a little more on the negative side. I don't like it. I'm not high on who Atlanta has as their quarterback. Before we even jumped on here, we were talking about Ritter. I think if he was ready to play, he'd have played by now. We've seen enough quarterbacks come into the league into the rookie year about week 4, week 5, week 6. Hey, let's see what they got. And I think Atlanta is worried. And as I said, I think Mac Jones would have been a nice little fit into that Falcons offense at that time when I remember we did our flop draft. I'm pretty sure we all said Mac Jones to the Falcons instead of Kyle Pitts. But I don't know. What do you think? Tight end landscape is absolutely atrocious. We know this. But give me something merry for us to end this podcast on, Ryan Mielek.
All right, I want to jag off to the future. I just want to know, in about a minute, if you think that Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars, after that embarrassing Detroit loss, are they going to end up being chained up like Jacob Marley, or are they going to end up waking up and buying the largest goose? Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars, your thoughts?
I think we saw a tale of 2 sides. We saw a great win against Baltimore, and then we watched an absolute trash heap of a game against the Lions. A lot of drop balls. Trevor Lawrence didn't look the same. Then he has now what looks to be a sprained big toe. Great. But Jags, man, let these next few games go. I say tank because at this point, what are we doing besides losing a better draft pick? And we're going to have to resort to the draft again. I do believe the turkey's coming. I do believe that one day we were all going to sit there and go, Merry Christmas, every Jaguar fan, however you want to spend that. Jaguars are fine. this isn't the year. We prefaced this year's podcast talking about the Jaguars saying it'll be a leap from 30 to 15, not 30 to 1. And 15 doesn't sound sexy, but 30 to 15 for the Jacksonville Jaguars is a great building block going into next season for the future.
God bless us, everyone. Once again, this is Fantasy R&R with Rob and Ryan. We'll see you next time.
Merry Christmas.
That was Fantasy with Rob and Ryan. Fantasy R&R.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.